Hi everyone, my name's Joanna and I'm talking to you from North London, and today I really wanted to share about a program that I discovered a little while ago called Dynamic Neural Retraining System, and it's something that I discovered that's completely saving my life and improving the quality of my life, and also for many other thousands of people across the world. For me, I'm particularly using it for electro-hypersensitivity but also other health issues. And I've met and spoken with people from other parts of the world that have been fully recovered for over 10 years. So it's amazing to know that there's something out there that can fully help us recover from these health issues and other health issues, which I'll come to share later. So the lady that discovered DNRS or created it, her name's Annie Hopper, and she created it in 2008. And she herself suffered from electro-hypersensitivity to the point where it became life-threatening, and she actually had to live in a tent in the woods. Not because she became homeless, but not financially, mostly just because of her health issues. And she eventually created this program and has been sharing it ever since. So I just want to be clear also that I don't work for the company, I'm not affiliated in any way. I'm just a regular person that's on a recovery journey. So the reason I'm sharing it is because not many people really know about EHS, and that it's possible to recover completely from it. So it's really to spread awareness and to empower people to take their health into their own hands and create lasting change and reclaim their lives, as I'm in the process of doing. I'm sure there's many people out there, maybe even you're watching now, that are suffering, so I totally empathise and understand. So really, yes, I wouldn't even be recording this video right now if it wasn't for this programme, which I started about 8 months ago now, 8.5 months ago. And living with EHS, initially it's a very frightening thing to be living with, because obviously we're in a very technologically dominated world, which is ever evolving. As we know, there's many more technology-based things coming into our lives as we speak. So stepping into things that are empowering to take our health into our own hands is so important at this time. Really, it's essential. So I'm very excited to be sharing this with you. So first I wanted to talk about the difference between electrosensitivity and electro-hypersensitivity. So with electrosensitivity, that really applies to all of us, because if you take the average person and put them next to a mast or next to a router for hours at a time, or even less, they're going to have some kind of symptom or negative experience. So that's really, really more so about environmental awareness. So if we're living a home that has a router, it's not working directly next to it, switching it off at night, hopefully choosing a home that isn't based right next to a mast, those kinds of things. Electro-hypersensitivity, when it comes to DNRS, is perceived as a stress-induced brain injury, which particularly affects the limbic system in the brain. So for that reason, it's really important to take a root cause approach to healing it and resolving it. And obviously there's a lot of gadgets and there's a lot of tools out there that can really help with negating the effects of electro smog or electrical appliances, but it's more of like a tool. It's important to go for the root cause and resolve it, so we're free to go anywhere we want and do whatever we want and live life optimally and thrive. Not to, let our world get smaller and smaller, as it has been for me and is now changing. So I wanted to share, to help illustrate how electro-hypersensitivity impacts people and how it can begin for some people, to share my own personal story as an example. So for me, the symptoms really started gradually from about 2019. In 2018, I moved into a new house, and very small house, and I basically was studying and working less than a metre away from a router, so literally just right next to me. Not really connecting that that's maybe not a good idea. So I would sit there for hours every day and do my work, and I wasn't really aware of the negative effects at that time. So I started to eventually react to that. As soon as I'd step into the house, I'd start having like prickling sensation on my skin, and I'd have hives all over my body. But still, the dots weren't connecting, so I carried on sitting there for a while. And then I really started to notice things changing. So I was having strange like kind of palpitations, and I went for an electrocardiogram, so where they measure your heart rate or heartbeat, and you have to wear it for a period of 24 or 48 hours. So they put it on me, and within seconds I started to feel the effects of it. So, and I had to remove it within the first half an hour. So then I started to realise that something was a bit unusual with the way that I was reacting to things. Obviously other people can successfully wear it for two days or one day, and I had to take it off. And then obviously this was 2019, so I was aware that 5G masks or 5th generation technology was around the corner, and I was already quite scared of that before it had arrived. And then finally, when it did arrive, I noticed that just a few seconds driving past the mast, I'd have a reaction. And so on one occasion it took 5 days to recover, which was quite scary actually, and I did have some holistic support with the recovery, so it may have taken longer. So I really started to get scared at that point, and was kind of avoiding streets, trying to work out where they were. There's about 3 around just our immediate area right now, so really felt like my world was getting smaller and smaller, and it's not a pleasant experience to kind of feel like you have to avoid and be scared of where you're going. Really, really unpleasant. And also around that time I was having other weird symptoms. So I would notice that if I took a supplement, that I would my speech would start to slur, and really strange symptoms. I couldn't take herbs, so even drinking a chamomile tea became impossible for me. I developed a lot of food sensitivity, so my food range and what I could eat became smaller and smaller and smaller, and I started to have joint inflammation when eating different things. So there was a lot happening together, and I'll come later to why that's all interconnected. So basically, in May 22, that's when I had what I thought was a positive experience, but my brain went crazy. This is about a year ago, almost a year ago. And within a few days, I just started reacting to everything. So I'd be in the house, and it felt like just my body was reacting to the lights, to the kitchen appliances, just being inside the house. I went from like just being free to go most places apart from those streets and use everything. I suddenly couldn't use my phone. If the laptop was on, I could only be within a 5-meter distance from it. Otherwise, any closer and I'd have a reaction. I couldn't use a TV, kitchen appliances, the lights were an issue. I even couldn't sit on the sofa and sleep in my bed anymore because my body was picking up on the electricity that was being conducted through the metal inside of it. So it's actually been 8 months since I've been sleeping on the floor. And along with that, no cars or any transport. So it was a lot. It was really like a dark night of the soul for me. And 8 months I've pretty much just been walking to the local high street in the park and home. Haven't left the area, so it's been kind of like a different kind of lockdown. At that time I was kind of considering that actually I may have to live in a tent. I was not succeeding to, I was just about able to live in the house, and it was really scary actually. Okay, so now to share a bit about neuroplasticity, which is what DNRS is based on. So neuroplasticity is the potential and ability for the brain to change and adapt or grow new neural networks due to experiences. So this can be positive experiences or negative ones. So that plasticity and malleability of the brain, it can work to our advantage or our detriment. And a really good example of that is the actor Leonardo DiCaprio, which I'm sure many of you know. he acted in a film called The Aviator, and this role that he acted is a character that happened to have OCD. So he played that role, they finished filming, and for 3 months following cessation of filming, he continued to exhibit symptoms of OCD. So there was an actual structural chemical change in the brain which had a kind of transient effect. So it's a really good example of how our thoughts affect our physiology, our thoughts or emotions affect our physiology. And there's a quote that really explains this really well by Jeffrey Schwartz, and the quote is, "The mind as a non-material force through focused attention can change the brain." So that's both empowering, actually I would say only empowering, because once we're aware how our thoughts and emotions have an effect, we can use that to our advantage. So DNRS basically works with neuroplasticity to rewire the brain to our advantage and to support us recovering from chronic health issues. So I think it's important to talk a bit about the limbic system, because this is the part of the brain which becomes damaged in relation to these symptoms, and it's the part of the brain that the DNRS program is focusing on in terms of rewiring. So the limbic system is known as the emotional brain, and it includes the structures like the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and I think the cingulate cortex, if I remember correctly. So it's responsible for so many things like processing our emotion, memory conversion, interpreting all of the senses, and it affects so many systems of the body: the immune system, the nervous system, the digestive system, the endocrine system, respiratory system, and the musculoskeletal system. So you can see how many things this part of the brain can trickle down and have an effect on. And the ways that this limbic system can become impaired is through many different ways. So I'll share with you now some ways that the limbic system can become impaired. So it could be from a toxicant or chemical exposure like pesticides or home cleaning products. It could be from a physical accident. It could be from psychological or emotional trauma, from chronic stress, from exposure to a large volume of EMF or radiation. Other triggers could be like if someone had a home or office renovation and there was lots of fumes from the paint, if someone had a head or neck injury or a surgery, or a loss of a loved one, or divorce. So, all really things that are going to create like a feeling of stress or distress or threat. So then we can imagine that the part of the brain that is responsible for processing emotion then becomes wired for threat and is interpreting the senses. So it's really seeing our environment through the lens of fear and fight or flight and threat. So the interpretation of those senses is going to be fear-based, threat-based. So it's going to react according to that. And at the same time, it records a memory. So basically that becomes a pattern that is ingrained in the brain, and it becomes an unconscious response to the environment. So we're reacting without even logically comprehending the reaction. It's totally unconscious. So we can be near something and have a reaction without understanding what's happening. So the brain is caught in a chronic state of emergency, and it's just stuck reacting in that way, even though the environment might not necessarily be a threat, or it could be a tiny little thing and it reacts completely out of proportion. So a good example of that would be if someone had a house alarm on their house, and the alarm, instead of setting off for what it's intended to do, like if there was an intruder in the middle of the night, it's setting off for a gust of wind or a leaf landing on the doorstep. So these tiny little things become like a major threat. Like I said, in the case of Annie Hopper, the reactions could potentially be life-threatening for some people. And the thing is with all of this, that our inclination is to then start to avoid these things, to avoid the router, to avoid the mast, to avoid going down this road or that road, to avoid sleeping in the bed and using the car and all these things. And actually it's that very behaviour, those protective behaviours like scanning for threats, that actually feed this mechanism, and it needs to be interrupted in order to resolve. So how do we do that? So I'm going to share next with you the 5 pillars of DNRS. So DNRS is based on implementing 5 different pillars every day. And there's a whole training program which explains this much more in depth. So I'm just going to summarize so everyone can get an idea of what's involved. And I also want to say before that it did take me quite a while to fully learn and get into this process. Like I said, it was a really difficult time overnight pretty much for me. So I was kind of paralyzed by a lot of fear. So there's no right or wrong way to get into any type of recovery. Yeah, everyone has their own recovery timeline. So that's just something I want to put out there before anyone, compares their journeys in any way. So the first pillar is called Pillar 1. So it's basically every day remembering and recognizing the link between the brain and the condition. So that would be like, instead of me saying, oh, it's my phone that's the problem, and it's the kettle, using the stove that's the problem, and it's being near the oven that's the problem, it's saying, no, actually reminding myself that my limbic system is impaired, it's injured, and that's the source of the problem. So I'm bringing it back to the situation rather than putting the fear into the external world. Okay, and pillar 2 is something called POP. So it's being aware of behaviours which are called pathways of the past. So that might be avoidance, it might be, so basically it could be an emotional behaviour, a thought, it could be a physical behaviour. So the physical behaviour would be avoidance, the psychological or emotional behaviour could be, oh, this is dangerous and I'm never going to recover, or I'm always going to live trapped in this area for the rest of my life, and it's interrupting those thoughts with the intention of weakening negative neural pathways and strengthening new positive ones. So that's really, really important. And also, taking away any identification with labels of conditions and not entertaining thoughts and emotions and behaviours that go along with them. So it's really so much about, and this is so hard, thinking better than we feel, even on those days that we just feel a bit hopeless, like we feel like we're not recovering. It's just really thinking better than we feel and stepping into the consciousness of a healthy person. It's another challenging thing to identify as, I'm fully healthy, I'm living my best life, even though that might not be so. That's part of the process of rewiring the brain, interrupting any negative thoughts which feed the old pathways to help bridge into the new. It's kind of like if you're driving a train and you keep diverting it onto another track and then diverting it again and diverting again. Eventually it takes a completely different route and the old route gets left behind. So it's just interrupting. And okay, so pillar 3 this is like probably takes the most time up of the day. It's an hour of training steps, which took me quite a while to learn, and it's based on initially putting templates on the floor, following it in a certain direction, using phrases and visualizations, and the visualizations are the bulk of that part of the pillar 3. So again, it's to create new neural pathways and to regulate away from that overreactive stress response. Yes, so pillar 4 is called incremental training, and it's now developing positive associations with the things that we were once afraid of. So that would be like, okay, so at the moment I have an issue to get in the car, and my brain is associating the car with a threat. So it would be like, oh, but cars are so great because of cars we can go on holidays, we can see friends, we can go shopping, all of the wonderful things. You can go camping if you wanted to, and even for a phone, obviously there's so many things using the internet. You can shop, you can do online courses, you can connect with friends and family on the other side of the world. Yeah, it's endless. So it's really kind of stepping away from how dangerous things are, even though we know that it's important to be environmentally aware. In this instance, it's very important to think of the positive for the sake of the recovery. So it's, developing positive associations and also desensitizing the brain. So that would mean, let's just say when I turn my phone on in the morning, it immediately switches on the Wi-Fi. So my POP, my pathway of the past would be, I will immediately switch it off because I'm scared of the Wi-Fi, it's dangerous, I'm going to react. it'd be like, no, I'll leave it on for a minute. And while I leave it on for that minute, I'll think of the positive associations, and I'll think about, say I'm using 3G as well, so I'll think of 5 positive words that begin with the letter G. So gorgeous, grateful, exactly, carry on in that direction. And then I'll just give myself a little clap and say, I'm so grateful to be using my phone. It allows me to do this and connect. And yeah, so it's really training every day in different areas. And pillar number 5 is elevating our emotional state. So this is really being intentional to generate feelings of joy and gratitude and euphoria, and that might be in any way that brings those feelings for you, whether it's dancing or just looking out the window and thinking, what you're grateful for that's outside, or the things that are beautiful, the sunny day. A really easy thing is just being grateful that we can see colour. Just seeing colour. Some people can't see at all. And to hear the bird song and to see the rays of the sun and to see, I'm a herbalist, so just to look at the new plants that are coming through once again, medicinal plants growing outside. So yes, so the idea really is to move away from stress hormones. That would be cortisol, adrenaline and noradrenaline. We're shifting away from the stress hormones which keep us in a state of survival, and moving into optimal hormones like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, which allow us to be in a state of growth and repair. So now I've shared about the 5 pillars, I'd love to just go back a little bit and talk about what my perfect storm was. So perfect storm really is what we talk about in the program. It's the series of events or things that happen prior to developing symptoms. And it's just a way of reflecting and understanding, yes, I sat next to the router and all these symptoms started happening, but what happened in the body or in the brain or in that person's life before that, which led to those symptoms happening, which led to the limbic system becoming impaired in the first place. So to illustrate that, I'll just share a bit about my background. So throughout my life, I've been dealing with developmental trauma and complex PTSD. I had, just before that time, a really intense detoxification process, which definitely was the start of when things started to change. I was also studying a really difficult herbal medicine diploma. I had a neck injury, an ex-partner took their life, and then we went into the lockdown and all of the world events unfolding. So really it's like the perfect scenario of complete stress, distress, being in survival mode, and you can see how that would set the scene for then threat, be the brain being in threat and interpreting everything in its environment as an invader or as something that needs to be reacted to. So, and now finally to share how the program has helped me so far. So, like I said, I've been practicing about 8.5 months. Initially, especially doing the hour of rounds every day, it took me starting from 2 minutes in the beginning because I was really finding it hard. I was being triggered with the PTSD as well, so I really had to work to get into it gradually. Some people start with the whole process straight off and they have results within 1 day. There was one man who couldn't leave his house without wearing I can't remember the name of it, it's a special mask, because he would react to fragrances. So he basically had to go outside wearing a mask all the time, otherwise he would just have major issues, and within 1 day he could stop wearing that mask. So everyone's different, everyone starts differently. I started to notice a difference within the first 1 to 2 weeks, and this isn't even with doing the program properly. So I started to notice I could be in the house comfortably, which is a huge relief because I thought I'd have to be in the tent. So that was, I can't even put into words how that felt. Yes, I was able to start cooking for myself again and use appliances in the kitchen and feel comfortable with the lights on. I was able to use my phone again, which is nice. I mean, it was a nice break. I was reading books for those couple of weeks, which is always a good thing. But it was nice to have technology and contact with friends back. Now I can use 4G as well, my mum's phone, from time to time. I can use an older laptop. It's kind of on its last legs, but I'm able to use it a little bit with the newer laptop. I can nap on the bed for hours now. I'm still sleeping on the floor, but I can nap on the bed. My goal was to be able to watch films on the TV and sit on the sofa at Christmas, and I reached that goal. So December gone, I was watching lots of films, sitting on the TV, no, sitting on the sofa, and yeah, it might not seem like a big thing, but for me it's absolutely huge. It's huge to be able to sit on the sofa with metal in it, not that even is a thing to think about, it's a huge thing. I've also been able to eat foods that I haven't been able to for 4 years, so this shows how when you're healing limbic system impairment, it heals everything, that root that goes back to the same root. I can also have chamomile tea again, my energy levels have become more balanced, my sleep quality is much better. So, I mean, that's within the space of 8.5 months. Like I said, I didn't start with all of it all at once, I did it very gradually, so I'm working on it now, and my next goal is to be able to get in the car, leave the area, just go to London and just go for a walk on the South Bank, and just, you know, the simple things, the really simple things, go to, yeah, a restaurant or something. And what was amazing, I have to say, is when I started doing it, I could actually feel my brain changing. It felt almost like instead of driving that way, it was driving that way, like a literal physical change. And I would notice like really mild headaches, which felt positive. It wasn't an uncomfortable headache, and tiny sparks, like electrical sparks in my head. So I remember when I was first getting into it, I was thinking, what can this really do? I'm just going to walk around on the floor in a circle and visualize this and visualize that. But to actually feel it happening was just so profound. So to mention also, what other things can this program help with? There's such a long list. I'll just share a few of the examples. It can help with chronic fatigue syndrome, OCD, fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivity, chronic pain, depression, anxiety, and the list goes on. The rest of that's on the website, so you can have a look there. And to conclude, I really want to share a favourite quote of mine with you. This is how it goes. It's by someone called Og Mandino, and it says, "I will love the light, for it shows me the way, yet I will endure the darkness, for it shows me the stars." And that's how I've kind of found this program, really. It's so much about faith. In the beginning, you're practicing, you don't see any results. It's a very, very dark time where you just feel I felt imprisoned, I felt hopeless, I felt almost like my life was over in a way, and I really had to tap into like inner strength, to take the leap of faith and to have determination and build the muscle of willpower and consistency, all things that I was always had issues with. So it's really, really working on myself. Is it totally an inside job? There's so much support on the website. There's groups. I participate in a weekly group where most of the people are in America that are dealing with these issues that are joining, but there's people joining from other countries too, and we all meet on a Monday and have a session together. So it's so nice to know that we're not alone in these issues. And yeah, it really is a bit of a recovery boot camp. So just if you decide to embark on it, it's basically, it is life-changing. It's changing really our character. We have to work on our character, because not only for courage and for, you know, determination and everything, but changing the way we think and feel and behave. It's some of these things are lifelong habits, and it's quite a job, but it's totally worth it. And really, a lot of the things that I learned are tools for life to help regulate emotions and build resilience. And it's so empowering to me to know that we have this ability inside of us to reshape our brains. How powerful is that, to know that we can, with the right knowledge and support, that we can make these changes within ourselves, for ourselves, and that we can totally change our reality. And just like, I feel like I'll be a totally different person on the other side of this, because once you show yourself that you can do something and come through it all, how can you not be inspired, and how can you not be renewed in your just mentality and approach to life? And yeah, it's emotional for me, you know, but it's also beautiful. I actually see a lot of the positive in this situation, and I tried to find that from the very beginning. I even wrote a list at the very start of all the positives in this situation, even from the very first week, and they're all true, and they really helped me to get through. So it really is finding the darkness, well, in the darkness, finding the stars. So I hope you enjoyed the talk, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So let me know. Thank you and take care.